A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review. This time I'm going to be talking about the Executioner's Song Omnibus. This thing is a beast. It contains the 12 parts of the Executioner's Song storyline that ran through issues of X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, and X-Force, as well as the epilogue issue and the bonus kind of material there. There are going to be massive spoilers, so if you don't want to know what happens, I suggest you stop watching this video. But otherwise, stay tuned for another episode of So this is the Executioner's Song collection. This was a story that ran through 4 different comics: X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, and X-Force. It was a 12-issue series, but there was an epilogue comic and another one called Strike File that was kind of like a bonus edition. Now, I've wanted to basically do this for a long time. This comic series is very near and dear to my heart, and not because I read it when it first came out in the 90s, but for another reason entirely. So there are going to be spoilers if you want to read this, and I highly suggest that you do, because it brings a lot of really interesting canon to the 90s X-Men mythology. Stop here, otherwise we will open it up. You get a nice introduction previously in case you haven't read any of the other comics, and then it jumps right in. Uncanny X-Men issue 2, 94, Executioner's Song Part 1. Already you can tell how this thing is going to start. We have Cable and we have Professor Xavier. You can see the art is absolutely fantastic. Here we've got Archangel getting ready to go on a date. We have Bishop and Rogue. Basically what's happening is there's a freedom concert being held in the park, and Professor Xavier is going to talk at this concert, kind of mend the gap between humans and mutants, as he always does. Then we have Cable come along, or so you think. We have Scott and Jean at a little bar that they used to go to when they were growing up. And Scott's in a bit of trouble here because he's been fantasizing about Psylocke. We've got Beast and Iceman going shopping for some reason. And then you see the members of X-Factor here. We have Strong Guy, Multiple Man, there's Quicksilver. Now, you're probably all familiar with the X-Men themselves, but X-Factor were a government group led by Havoc, who is Cyclops' brother. And they basically work for the government. The other team that you need to know about in this story is X-Force. They're like the New Mutants being led by Cable, kind of like the younger crowd. So we have Scott and Jean getting ambushed by Caliban. Caliban at this point, he was a Morlock, but now he is one of Apocalypse's horsemen. He is Death, I believe. And then we cut to the concert again. Colossus and Iceman are... Oh, that was Colossus. That wasn't Beast. Back in the going shopping, that was Colossus. Yeah. So they see what's going on with Scott and Jean, and they're going to help. They get in a fight. Professor Xavier starts talking, and then he gets shot. And that is really the key focal point of this story, is basically who shot Professor Xavier. They fight the Horsemen, and then X-Force kind of realize that Cable is the one that's been blamed for shooting Xavier, and they are going to be hunted as well, so they basically piss off. So part 2, they're trying to save Charles, but X-Force realizes they're in trouble, that other teams are going to be coming after them, which they ultimately do. X-Factor find X-Force and they fight. X-Force realizes they are not going to win and ultimately end up fleeing. Some fantastic art here. Then the X-Men show up. We have Psylocke, Wolverine, Beast, Rogue, and of course Gambit. And now we come to possibly the best part of the book, is this villain here, Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister has hired some people to capture Scott and Jean in exchange for some genetic material. So that kind of is going on in the background here. And then they basically tell the X-Men that there's nothing they can do to save Charles Xavier. He's been shot with a bullet that contained a technovirus, and he's basically going to die. So they take him home. They take him back to the X-Mansion, trying to work out what's going on. They get help from Moira McTaggart. And then we have kind of all the teams getting ready to do their thing. Bishop decides to stay back at the mansion. Mr. Sinister hands over Scott and Jean, gets his genetic material, and then we have X-Factor kind of doing their thing. X-Force, kind of doing their thing. Now we find out that Apocalypse is also involved in this. His horsemen were the ones that attacked Scott and Jean, and he wants to know why, because he didn't send them out, and he has his Dark Riders with him here. So then we have the teams all going on a hunt. Cable comes back to Grey Malkin, which is his space station orbiting the Earth, and realizes that he has been framed for shooting Charles. And then kind of Bishop realizes that there is an intruder in the X-Mansion, and that intruder is Mr. Sinister. So they kind of get into it a bit. And now we're going to have the big showdown between X-Men, X-Factor, and X-Force. X-Force, of course, you have Sunspot, Warpath, Cannonball, Siren, Feral, Shatterstar, and I forget who that dude is. So then this issue, number 4, is just a huge fight, really dynamic action there. The other members of X-Factor and the X-Men go off in search of Scott and Jean and come across the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. There's Famine there, draining Beast. Really cool panel. So Mr. Sinister basically lets them know what's going on, more or less. Kind of sets things in motion. Cable decides he's going to hunt whoever did it. And then we come across Strife, and we find out that Strife has orchestrated the kidnapping of Scott Summers and Jean Grey. And we also find out that he's taken them somewhere that's kind of off the grid, off the radar. The X-Men catch up to X-Force and ultimately apprehend them and bring them back to the mansion. In part 5, we have Apocalypse going up against the X-Men. Jubilee having a little shit fit. Jubilee, you might remember, is the character from the first 2 episodes of the X-Men animated series, Night of the Sentinels, Part 1 and Part 2. See, X-Force is in the cell in the danger room. We have some more back and forth, and finally we have Apocalypse coming. and Apocalypse basically beating the crap out of everyone, even though he's not at full strength. Jean Grey gets tortured a little bit. Val, who's kind of the government liaison to X Factor, reveals that Strife is probably behind the shooting. Bishop and Wolverine go rogue on a Canadian base. And they end up meeting Cable, who they actually believe shot Charles. Now we have, I'm not a fan of this cover, and I'm not a fan of the art in this issue, part 6, but this is basically Wolverine, Cable, and Bishop fighting, and then they kind of are getting the help of X-Force now. They kind of believe that they didn't have anything to do with it. Apocalypse offers to help them heal Xavier. More fighting, of course. Fighting Apocalypse's Dark Riders here. And there's Strife. And he's torturing Cyclops, and Cyclops, he's trying to get Cyclops to believe he's killed Jean Grey. There's a character here, one of the Dark Riders is called, what's his name? Kamikaze. Kamikaze. Now, this is a really odd sequence. This is the death of Kamikaze. Archangel turns around and basically Kamikaze decapitates himself on Archangel's wings. Very odd, kind of off-panel death. I'm not quite sure if it was really worth it. I don't know why they killed off Kamikaze like that. Maybe it's to show just how far Archangel has kind of fallen. We get some more Bishop Cable stuff. And then Reaper is taking down Gambit and Quicksilver. So now we have Psylocke saving the day again. More fighting with the Dark Riders. And basically at this point the teams are kind of realizing that Strife is behind this and trying to find Scott and Jean. So we see Moira McTaggart here, Strife on his base, contemplating, you know, what's going on. And then the Dark Riders kind of bust in, and Strife goes absolutely nuts on them. And then we have an Apocalypse and Strife showdown, which is really interesting because these two characters are intrinsically linked. For those of you that don't know, Strife is a clone of Cable. Cable is Scott and Jean's son. Apocalypse infused Cable with a techno-organic virus when he was a baby, so they took him to the future, where he was raised by the Ascani. And he travels back into the past. So Strife is a clone of Cable that was raised by Apocalypse. But when Apocalypse found out that Strife was the clone and not the actual baby, he basically dumped Strife. So Strife has a lot of issues against Scott and Jean, but also against Apocalypse himself. So part 8 is a Strife Apocalypse showdown. We have a lovely side panel, something that was very popular in the 90s and really annoying in my opinion. It's a fantastically drawn fight, very dynamic. And then ultimately the Dark Riders, because the Dark Riders follow whoever's strongest. It's clearly not Apocalypse anymore. So they follow Apocalypse. We have some more kind of back and forth with the X teams. And then we have Strife again. Scott and Jean trying to escape. Apocalypse meeting Archangel. But for those of you that don't know, in the Mutant Massacre storyline, Apocalypse captured Angel, cut off his wings, and gave him these techno-organic wings and turned him into one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. But he broke free of his programming. And Apocalypse is now offering to heal Xavier and help. So here, we're meant to believe that Scott in Part 9 has killed Jean, but it's a trick to get the Dark Riders. They escape, but Strife is, of course, letting them. Wolverine and Bishop are in Grey Malkin in the space station, and they realise that that is why Jean hasn't been able to call for help, because she wasn't on Earth. That Strife has actually taken them to one of Apocalypse's former bases in on the moon. They find a little baby connected to all these computers. It's a test from Strife, who basically wants them to kill the child because he has linked his mind with the child. If they kill the child, they will kill him. But, of course, they're the good guys, and they don't do it. They fight the Dark Riders again, escape, and realise that they are in space. So now that they know that, Wolverine gets word to the X-Men. They, of course, are saved by Strife, and they all decide to go on the big rescue mission, which is the big kind of finale while Apocalypse heals Xavier. Charles Xavier, I should say. And so this is where we discover that he's a clone of Cable. So they have the big fight, which is, of course, awesome. And as you can see, the art is just phenomenal. Apocalypse joins in, and Charles wakes up free from the techno-organic virus. And then we have the last chapter of Executioner's Song. Again, we have the side panel. So basically, this is where Cable is fighting his clone, and the clone is basically getting the upper hand. And eventually, Cable says there's only one way to do this, and he gets Scott to push a self-destruct button, which basically destroys or sucks both Cable and Strife into a time portal, presumably killing them. And this is the choice that Strife was always trying to get Scott and Jean to make. Now, this page here, the last page of Executioner's Song, is really great because Mr. Sinister, has this geneticist open the canister that supposedly has the genetic material from Scott and Jean in it. And it's empty. And, of course, Mr. Sinister is like, yeah, I knew this would be it. But you can see these vapors coming out, and the Doctor starts to cough. And at the end, Sinister says, please do look after that cough. This vapor is the beginning of the Legacy virus. Now, the Legacy virus was a storyline that went for a ton of issues as kind of like a background story, a virus that is genetically whatever. A virus that's designed to kill only mutants. And it actually does kill a lot of mutants. Colossus' sister Ilyana, and a lot of others before. It's finally a cure's finally found for it. Predisposed. That's the fucking word I was trying to get out before. The virus was predisposed to killing mutants. Okay, so this is the end of the 12-part Executioner's Song, with the Legacy Virus storyline kind of opening up. Then we come to Song's End, Uncanny X-Men 297. Now, this is where I jumped in to the story. This is the first comic book I ever bought. As a kid, teen, whatever. This was really the first comic book in my collection. But nothing really happens. This is just an epilogue to the Executioner's Song. Still, I thought it was pretty cool. So we start out with Beast and Archangel going to fix the bar where Scott and Jean were attacked at the beginning of Executioner's Song. And they're reminiscing about their days growing up in the X-Mansion. And they're talking about when they were younger, the professor set them up with an essay, and Archangel paid Beast $1,000 to write the essay, which he did, but then Beast went and told the professor, and then the professor said, you don't have to write an essay now, I want a telekinetic presentation, and because Archangel didn't know anything, he got a failing grade, so it's kind of funny little thing there. We have Rogue and Gambit, of course, doing the on-again, off-again thing. And we have Jubilee, who is stunned to find that as a side effect of being cured, Charles can now walk. But for how long this is going to last, they don't know. So we get some more back and forth here. She gives him some rollerblades. And then we have Rogue and Gambit talking on the roof. Rogue basically saying that she is in love with Gambit, but of course they can never be together. For those of you that don't know, Rogue's power is when she touches someone, she absorbs their powers and their memories, and if she touches them for too long, their persona. Gambit, of course, being Gambit, kind of does his smooth-talking thing. Jubilee flings Charles into a lake, just having a bit of fun because of what's been going on recently. They fix the bar. Gambit tells Rogue that he's not going anywhere. Jubilee and Xavier share a moment, and he's going to walk away, and Jubilee's saying, please just let him make it with some dignity. Beautiful, beautiful panel here. I really love this panel. And then she's there to catch him when he falls and helps him to his wheelchair. And that is the end of the Executioner's Song. A beautiful comic to end off a rather action-packed story. But this book also has Strife's strike file, an addendum to the Executioner's Song. Basically, this is files that Bishop recovered from the moon base, and Charles is going through them, and so we get, there we go. So there's files on, and it's basically, this is written from the perspective of Strife, what he thinks about each mutant. It doesn't have anything to do with their powers and whatnot. So we have Xavier, Magneto, the Acolytes. The Acolytes are Magneto's kind of group. Jean and Scott. Ascani, this is the woman who raised Cable. Polaris and Havoc. Havoc is Scott's brother, you actually saw Havoc in X-Men First Class, the film, a good version of him. Polaris has magnetic powers. They're a couple at this point in the comics. Holocaust, Apocalypse. Holocaust I'm not familiar with. Apocalypse, the Dark Riders, Mr. Sinister, my absolute favourite X-Men villain of all time. Caliban, Beast, Archangel, Psylocke / Betsy Braddock. This is a really interesting character. For some reason, she was a white British woman, and then in the comic continuity, she got turned into a sexy Asian ninja. So, makes perfect sense. Illyana, Colossus's younger sister, also known as Magic. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Bishop and Wolverine. Graydon Creed. Graydon Creed is the son of Mystique and Sabretooth. He is not a mutant, however, he still doesn't want people to know that his parents are mutants because he runs for president on an anti-mutant platform, and he heads an anti-mutant militia group. Forge, Moira McTaggart, Threnody. Threnody is a character that I was introduced to in the comic X-Man. So I'm not too familiar with what her powers and abilities are. Sebastian Shaw and the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club play a huge role in a storyline about powerful mutants playing a game. The Upstarts, I believe the group is called. And the game is to assassinate mutants to get points. And it's being run by the games master, who actually hears every single voice on the planet at any given time. And the game is the only thing that stops him from going completely crazy. There's the Upstarts right there. Fabian Cortez, leader of the Acolytes. Gideon. The Mutant Liberation Front. Cannonball. Cable. And Strife himself. Whoops. So that was Strife's Strike File. I had that book as well. It was fun just to read. Now, the extras in this book are friggin' awesome. We have the cards. I forget what set this was from. But these were all the cards that dealt with the Executioner song. You have the front and the back. These were like the X-Men trading cards. I used to buy these as a kid. These were really cool. The art is just beautiful, beautifully painted pictures. Then we have the Fall crossover animated series. Executioner's song. Some interviews with the creators. And then we have alternate covers for different editions of it. So that was the X-Men Executioner's Song Omnibus, a fantastic read. So if you enjoyed this video, I plan on doing more. I have a lot more X-Men graphic novels like this I want to talk about. So please hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me what your favorite X-Men moment is if you want to do something like that. Follow us. All the stuff is coming up at the end. So until then, my only advice to you is, read a fucking book, people. Stay safe.